Hi there. Welcome, everyone. Bleav in Bills special pregame edition. Buffalo-Baltimore divisional round of the playoffs coming up Sunday night. Orchard Park. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Sal Majorana with the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, as always. And Matt Sims. Very happy to have you join us for such a matchup between two great quarterbacks. It is so great to have a former NFL quarterback with us. And for everything you do, Matt, welcome. Thanks for your time, man.
No, thank you for having me, Adam, Adam, Sam, Sal. Excuse me. Wow, you know what? Let's just start that over because that was a total snafu there.
But it's all right. Hey, Matt. Look, I think we could all agree. Adam and I have talked. We had Jerry Ostrowski on early in the week, and we all kind of agree that this is the highlight game of the weekend. I mean, that's the reason it's on CBS at 6:30 Sunday night. There's so many things that we can get into here, but just from your perspective to start us off, can you think about what happened in week 4 to the Bills in that game? Does anything matter regarding that game as we go into Sunday night?
It does and it doesn't. I think it both can be true in a sense. When you play a team twice in a season, especially the regular season compared to the postseason, there is no doubt that you gather a lot of information about yourself, right? Your own roster, but also too about the opponent, the style in which they play. The fact that this game took place September 29th, I Bleav it was, it does feel like it was a lifetime ago for both franchises, and the fact that both teams have really come a long way. I think Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, has tremendously improved, obviously, how he calls the game, how they manage their defense, and how their defense as a whole has played. And I think the same could be true as well for McDermott and even for Brady as well on the offensive side for the Buffalo Bills as far as their identity and how they call the game. So the one thing that concerns me is that Derrick Henry played well in that first matchup, and I have that same feeling that he's going to play another big-time role in this game this weekend. And that really probably is my one question mark I have for the Buffalo Bills from that first matchup that they had compared to this next one. How do you slow down Derrick Henry and not let him rip off big-time plays, big chunk plays, in cold weather football, have to get tackles for a loss, and what does that look like for Bobby Babbage and Sean McDermott calling the game?
All right. I mean, that I think we'd all agree is a central question.
Right.
That the Bills defensively, where they've been most vulnerable this year against the run, need to answer. Now you think back to that week 4 matchup, Matt, right? And you've got 3 significant starters back in the lineup for Buffalo. You know, in Bernard, Milano is back and seems to be playing very well. And Taron Johnson, who's a key piece for what they like to do defensively.
Right.
Anyway, but Sal and I have talked about the fact, I mean, this defensive front, when it comes down to size, strength, physicality in the trenches, right? As well as the Bills' offensive line is played, and defensively on the other side of the ball, the defensive front is kind of light for Buffalo, right? To me, can they physically match up? And that's where I feel like there are similarities to what happened back in week 4, because that fundamentally hasn't changed. Right?
That's
do you see it that way?
I do. And I think for the most part, the whole NFL world kind of sees it that same ways too. There's a few things that I think are tried and true when we talk about playoff football, and that's just physicality in both fronts, size and speed. And typically teams that are the bigger, stronger, more physical football teams win a lot of these key matchups in the playoffs. And that's the big concern for the Buffalo Bills, is just the fact for man-to-man, are they going to rely more on trying to play with speed, right? That's their strength defensively. So if they're going to rely on the speed aspect, that means that size is going to be an issue. They are going to have some mismatches. We know that Baltimore enjoys the fact that they're going to put out 2 tight ends or even Ricard out there in certain situations and still be able to do play action passes and still be able to do their running game with their quarterback and running back. What do they do defensively, the Buffalo Bills, to counter that? Are they going to just sell out to stop the run? If they do that, that means that typically there's only going to be a safety deep in those situations. And when those things happen, you really have to play very sound gap-contained football and be sure-handed tacklers in that situation, because those are the opportunities when there is a broken tackle, they go for big chunk plays. And when you play that style of football, that is the one repercussion of that is that if someone misses the gap in one play or two plays here or there, they could be, unfortunately, the plays that ultimately break for you. So be curious to see if McDermott tries to balance the game a little bit with playing kind of more vanilla between the 20s like we've seen kind of all year. And then when they get into that high red zone area, really switching up the looks, switching out what they're doing, and totally having a different game plan and forcing, hopefully, the Baltimore Ravens to rely on field goals in those situations.
Yeah, what you said, it rings so true. The first play of the game back in week 4, the Bills had got out of their gap. All it took was one guy, and Derrick Henry was gone 87 yards for a touchdown. So that's going to be a huge factor. Here's what I look at. I was watching, I saw Dan Orlovsky, I'm sure you know, had a great breakdown about the Ravens' physical advantage in this game. And he pointed out how often they go similar to the Bills when they bring in that 6th offensive lineman. Yes. But they also add Ricard, the fullback, to the play too. That means they've got 7 guys who weigh 300 pounds or more going against this Bills front that will typically be in that nickel defense. Even if you bring in Dorian Williams, Matt, onto the field and take Taron Johnson off, okay, you gain 30 pounds at linebacker, but they've got a 380-pound guard in Falele who will have a 100-pound advantage on Ed Oliver. That's to me, I don't know how the Bills overcome that disadvantage. I just don't see how they're going to be able to deal with that physicality in this game. Would you agree that's such a huge thing for Buffalo?
It is such a huge thing. And this is where, when we get into this playoff mode of football, this is where confusion probably is the biggest weapon that McDermott and the defense can do, right? For the Baltimore Ravens, is give them a few wrinkles or looks that maybe they have not quite seen this season, and make sure that the offensive line has to over communicate and things that they haven't prepared for necessarily. So when you're not the biggest opponent or the biggest team, you got to make sure that confusion is your ultimate weapon, because confusion makes teams slower. And even though they're bigger and stronger, if you can confuse them and limit the strike point and how aggressive they are at the point of attack, that usually favors the defense and favors a faster defense, which the Buffalo Bills are.
I wanted to ask you, because we asked Jerry O the same question. I want to get your perspective. So if the Bills, who have played nickel defense probably 90% of the time this year,
right?
Obviously, that's not a great defense to play against this team. Is it a risk to try to do something that you don't normally do, especially in a playoff game? Is that, I understand you want to surprise teams and you game plan specifically for a team, but to change from a nickel defense to a 4-3, is there any risk involved there? Or do you think we're too far in the season? These guys know what they're doing.
I don't think they necessarily have to change the identity of what their team is, but you do have to throw wrinkles in for down and distance specific plays where the Baltimore Ravens are expecting some sort of cover 3 coverage, but instead you're running a fire zone blitz out of that cover 3 look. So you're just trying to break some tendencies to add confusion to those certain down and distances and not necessarily change the whole identity of your team. I know for a fact I've been on football teams when even I was with the New York Jets and Rex Ryan. He had a game plan for the first and second quarter, and then the third quarter was its own game plan, and then the fourth quarter he did a totally different thing when he was going up against Tom Brady. And that was just to make sure that they had to constantly communicate what they were doing. And Rex's ideas worked a lot of those times because it always hindered the team from starting fast each and every quarter. They kind of had to start over and then slowly build momentum, which give us a tremendous advantage. Now, unfortunately for us, we were terrible on offense that year, but still, big picture, he did a good job of slowing down the opposing offense by giving different looks each and every quarter.
Really interesting. You get a sense of how central this physicality point is to this discussion, because we really haven't, we're 9.5 minutes into this podcast, and we really haven't gotten into the matchup at quarterback yet. Which of course, but it speaks to the dynamic and the matchup and the challenge that Buffalo faces, certainly, and what they have to overcome in this game. I do want to get to quarterback right after the quick word from the sponsor here. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting, the largest selection of odds on everything. Football, the NBA, NHL, college basketball, UFC. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use the promo code Bleav, B-L-E-A-V, You get the welcome bonus on your first deposit. All right, Matt Sims here with us. Adam Benini, Sal Mayorana, Bills and Ravens divisional playoffs, 6:30 p.m. Sunday, Orchard Park and Highmark Stadium. And Matt, since we were talking about defense, let's keep it on that side of the ball from a Buffalo perspective. Earlier in Lamar Jackson's career, McDermott defenses actually did a pretty good job of limiting him in the matchups when they would face him. But then, things change when you added Derrick Henry into the mix, right? And so beyond just what's happening from a physicality standpoint, I mean, the challenge that presents, and the Bills aren't alone in having and struggling and potentially to deal with this and what they did in week 4. I mean, you have all the athleticism and escapability and passing ability that Jackson has. And then you have the ability, you bring in Henry, and they can just pound any defense with that traditional run game.
Right.
I mean, what do you do? I mean, you mentioned the disguises and that sort of thing. How well equipped do you see this Buffalo defense as being able to not only disguise, but actually execute and deal with that kind of two-headed monster?
Well, the biggest concern that I have, right, for the Buffalo Bills defense is just getting off the field on third downs. And that's where I think if you can be proactive with creating that confusion we discussed on first and second down, putting Baltimore and third and long situations consistently, then you definitely, I think, can win this battle in a lot of matchups. Because with Zay Flowers being out, you're now relying on a very big, tight end personnel essentially to cut you up in the secondary, where now speed will be an advantageous thing for you in those obvious passing situations. And to be able to cover up people in man-to-man coverage, and to be able to switch up the looks and play fast and rally to the football. Of course, keeping Lamar Jackson within the pocket always helps in that situation. But if they can get them off the field, I think that plays big time. The thing that is most concerning, I think, for Bills fans when you look at this, if the Baltimore Ravens are absolutely dominating time of possession and keeping Josh Allen off the field, and slowly wearing out an already undersized defensive front, that's where it can get concerning, and that's where it could get ugly for them. So that's where, again, the chess match of creating confusion on first and second down, I think, is absolutely paramount for the Buffalo Bills to lead to those third and manageable situations for their own defense.
It's crazy. Last week, the Bills had the ball for almost 42 minutes.
Right.
The Ravens had the ball for more than 40 minutes in their game too. That's the exact same script you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've already written about this too. Time of possession for Buffalo, especially because of the physical disadvantages they have, is going to be huge. Josh Allen and that offense, there's no time for punts in this game. They're going to have to sustain drives, which they did last week. They ran the ball so well, and they've got to keep Lamar and Derrick Henry off the field. Now, the problem with that is, Matt, last week they ran the ball with reckless abandon against, a Denver defense that isn't nearly as big as Baltimore's defense, especially up front. They've got really good players on that Denver defense, but they're not the same size as this Baltimore defense at those first two levels, especially. That's where my concern is. Can the Bills run the ball against this team, enabling them to sustain drives? What are you seeing on that side of the ball?
They have to do it, honestly, just to keep the Baltimore defense honest and to continue to make sure. The one thing that my father has always told me, right from his Parcells, Belichick years, is every now and then you just need to let your team go and hit the other team and physically punch them in the face. And you got to do that if you're the Buffalo Bills. Your offensive line is one of the strengths of your team. And the fact that they have to line up and run it is a key for them. What I look to see Joe Brady do to combat this situation is to occasionally mix up the looks as far as how they approach their running game. So instead of being traditional and some of those under center situations, I wouldn't be shocked if the Buffalo Bills give the Ravens a little bit of a taste of their own medicine, with Josh Allen and Cook in the backfield, doing some read option plays, spreading the formations out sideline to sideline in 10 and 11 personnel. So 3 receivers or 4 receivers on the field, or even an 11, and still extending Dalton Kincaid out in those formations, and making the Baltimore Ravens decide, are we going to play coverage and spread out, or are we going to still focus on the interior of the box and make sure that we're taking away any of these easy runs that are favorable to the Buffalo Bills? So I think that's going to be an interesting chess match too. I think Brady of course, with his quarterback and his running back, will have tremendous flexibility in doing multiple formations, shifts and motions to really make that Baltimore Ravens defense over communicate, but also to make them identify what is your goal in each and every play. Stop the run or stop the pass. And if so, essentially checking or canning to a play to do the opposite for advantageous looks on their side of the football.
Well, I mean, it is worthy to note, and Sal and I have mentioned this. I mean, the fact that with the Bills, you're dealing with balance at a historic level, right?
Right.
First NFL team ever with 30-plus passing, 30-plus rushing touchdowns. So it would seem they would be equipped to establish the run game, and obviously the physical mismatch is central to that discussion either way that you see it. The big difference with Baltimore, where they really evolved from a defensive standpoint, right, is in the secondary. Kind of mid-season, made some changes there, and now they've become infinitely more difficult to throw against. We know the versatility and the number of receivers and targets that Josh Allen uses. How do you see from that perspective? If Baltimore's goal, which it obviously is, it's been stated, to simplify and make Buffalo one-dimensional, how well-equipped because I feel like Allen and the Bills are going to be able to throw on this team despite the improvements they've made. How do you see it?
I agree. I do. I think that he will be able to throw the football. I think the running game really is more so just an effect, again, of time possession like we discussed, and really just ball control football as well, working in the opposite effect of keeping Lamar Jackson and wearing out the Baltimore Ravens defense. But I do agree with you. I think that they will definitely have an advantage throwing the football. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if we look at the stats at the end of this football game and Josh Allen has 40 pass attempts in this one. I do think that the Baltimore Ravens will have a tough time in the secondary matching up with what the Buffalo Bills do. I think Samuel being back and playing and being more involved in the offense is huge. I think Dalton Kincaid will have some matchups as well that they could take advantage of. And also, the Baltimore Ravens, they are more of a power rush football team, pass rush team. It's not speed necessarily. It's not going to be overwhelmingly fast in the backfield to Josh Allen. It's more of a slow collapse your pocket type of style. If Josh can get outside the pocket like he has done consistently throughout the year, that's where I think, again, he can do a lot of the most of his damage with some of those extended football plays outside of what the structure of the play design is, because I think they'll have a tough time continuing to contain him with the fact that they're not necessarily fast in the defensive front. They're more powerful with their pass rush.
You know, we've talked about Amari Cooper on this show multiple times. And, you know, I'm sorry, I've been underwhelmed by what he's been able to bring to this offense. He's played 9 games. He has 22 catches. And, you know, Adam and I have gone back and forth about, well, he changes how teams cover. But I'm not even seeing, I mean, this is just me as a journalist. You know more about football and you watch tape more than I do, but I don't see it being the impact that a lot of other people are claiming he's having out there. I mean, Khalil Shakir still does what he does. I just don't see teams defending the Bills any differently because Cooper's out there, and Cooper just has not been a target for Josh Allen. What have you seen? Am I missing something here, Matt, about why he has not been able to be a bit more productive than I think the Bills even hoped he would be when they acquired him in the trade?
Yeah, of course. Just, you know, obviously him not being 100% healthy this entire time hasn't helped either, with just getting the more practice reps and obviously just coming over from another team and just adapting to this new system. But I think really what you're discussing is not necessarily the fact that Amari hasn't been as productive. I think that he is still going to be a huge piece, and whether it's 1, 2, or 3 catches this weekend, they're going to be for big time plays. There's going to be no wasted downs in these situations. And I think his skill set, him and Keon Coleman, his ability to be strong and physical at the catch point, because I think that's what Josh Allen's strength is. I think that's the quarterback that they really figured out. Khalil Shakir does all the things that they want, that Stephon Diggs did, as far as all the intermediate stuff, the speed stuff, winning versus man coverage. But I think Josh's strength is really being able to throw 50-50 type balls, back shoulder footballs, high point footballs to big, strong, physical receivers. And that's what Amari is. That's what Keon is. That's what Dalton Kincaid is. And I think those will be the things that we see in this matchup. They're not going to be separating a ton from this Baltimore Ravens secondary where they're just winning in these one-on-one situations. I think they'll be covered up pretty well, and it's going to be precision passing and physical catching at the point of attack for this group. So I understand that he hasn't been the splash, but at the same time, we also are seeing the development of Josh Allen too, as being just a really well-rounded quarterback that plays the game of football. And you guys know it as well as anybody. There's no doubt that now without Stephon Diggs, it is more so about the conglomerate, the group, the whole, and just making sure that we move down the field instead of just feeding one superstar. And Amari, he's a competitor. He's talented in one-on-one situations. He's still going to make some big-time catches for you. He's still going to make contested catches for you. And that's really what's going to come down to again this weekend, is just winning those one-on-one opportunities consistently with those precision passes.
And, of course, Matt, the big national storyline, and understandably so, is Lamar versus Josh.
Right.
Right? And Sal and I mean, we've been here in Buffalo for a long time, and we were down in Dallas draft night 2018, and remember Josh, 7th overall. Lamar Jackson, last pick of the first round, with open questions as to whether or not he could even play the quarterback position,
right,
which he has obviously answered. So when you see both, you just mentioned Josh's evolution, and Sal and I have been using the word refined. This is the most refined version, smart, mature, intelligent. The turnover numbers speak to that, or lack thereof, right? But when you see, as a former NFL quarterback, when you see both of these guys, I just want your take kind of on each of them, how you've seen them grow and where they rank kind of in the hierarchy of NFL quarterbacks, and what they represent about the present and maybe future of the position.
Well, you think back to that draft night, and you think about just the breakdowns of each quarterback, and the question mark about Josh was, well, he wasn't accurate, he wasn't this, he wasn't that. He had all these question marks, and but this is where the physical attributes are things that we care about when we're evaluating quarterbacks. He's big, he's strong, he's athletic, he has a cannon for an arm. And all those things are true today in the NFL. And as you continue to play the position, it's like that line from Inglourious Basterds. It's like, how you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. And, for Josh Allen, it's the same thing. The more that he's practiced, the more that he's played, the better he has gotten. And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't heard much about Wyoming football since Josh Allen played quarterback there. And it's now Louisville's a little different. They've done a better job with their quarterback and head coach situation. So they're still high flying on offense. But, even with Lamar, he was a great player in college football. His ability to make plays, the fact that he was the fastest football player on the field every single time he played in college was ridiculous. His speed has translated fantastically well to the NFL. But people, I think, always did not give him enough credit for his passing, his touch, his awareness, and football IQ on the field as a quarterback. And, people just kind of fell into this trying to label him as he's an athlete and this. And it was just silly and honestly just dumb. Both guys are absolutely phenomenal. And as far as the hierarchy of football, we're really looking at, I think, like the second or third coming of the golden age of the quarterback position in a way. So we'll call it the third because, there's been a few. But with Patrick Mahomes, with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, these guys, I mean, what else could you want? They are the Mount Rushmore of how to play the quarterback position. And what I love about it more than anything, since I coach quarterbacks in the offseason with young guys from youth quarterbacks all the way up through the pros, there is no perfect one way to do it. It really is a position where true artistry is at play. You could do it many different ways and be successful as long as you have coaches that believe in you and can help you just push the limits of what you can do both physically and mentally and build you up. And that's where, for both of these guys, they're a part of two franchises, two coaching staffs that have done a great job of identifying their football players, identifying their talent, maximizing that talent. And as they continue to do that, continuing to push what they can do. And now we're seeing that expanded version of these football players as really refined football players, like you mentioned.
It's funny because your dad and I are probably pretty close to the same age. I'm 62. Okay. So when I started in this business, late 80s, and then 1990 was my first year on the Bills beat. I'm talking about covering Jim Kelly,
Right.
Phil Simms, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway, right?
Yeah.
As great of a quarterback class as you could ever imagine.
Right.
And now we get, like you just pointed out, all the guys that we have this year. And people tend to forget how good those guys were. Yeah, the quarterback position has evolved because the rules of the game have certainly changed to help these quarterbacks today. And athleticism is so much more important than it was when they were pocket passers. But people tend to forget, and I'm sure your dad reminds you this all the time, that he played with some pretty damn good quarterbacks in the day. Am I right about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of these guys too watch today's football game and say, damn, I would really like a crack at this style.
Yeah.
Because I think, people kind of forget too that when you think about that generation, a lot of people think about like Randall Cunningham as being that dual threat quarterback, but like John Elway, my father, like they were really good athletes too. They were still scrambling for good plays and good chunks and all that stuff. That just wasn't the style that Parcells was trying to play back then. They weren't thinking that way offensively to attack defenses. But the talent was absolutely there. Their throwing ability was top notch. I'm in this industry. We have all these quarterback gurus. I think a lot of the quarterback gurus out there are actually ruining quarterbacks and how they coach things. I think they've gotten too cerebral with the mechanics of it and all that stuff. When you go back and look at those QBs from the late 80s, early 90s, they were absolutely ripping the football. You have tremendous throwers. And, that's what we see with these two guys today. With Lamar and with Josh, you see guys that the motions are compact. They're athletic. They have great feet. Their feet match the rhythm of the throw that they're making. And then all the extra things are just a repercussion because they do, the first few steps of the process well, where everyone wants the exotic throw and all that stuff. These guys do fantastic things from the pocket, and they have done a great job of just improving year by year. And me as a fan, I'm so pissed that we have to watch these guys play in the divisional round. And I really would have wished to see each one of these guys get a crack at Kansas City and Mahomes in the playoffs. That would have made Kansas City's potential three-peat, I think, that much better if they would have had to gone through these two superstars. But still, it's hard because I really am a huge fan of both these QBs. And I know, unfortunately, the media will be crushing one's legacy after this weekend unnecessarily because of just the fact that it's the greatest team game ever. And sometimes we forget that, and media is just trying to make headlines most of the time.
Yeah, I won't be crushing either quarterback because at this time of year, you're losing to great teams.
That's right.
Fans who lose their minds about this really drive me nuts because one of these teams is going to lose to a great player and a great team. So I just sometimes think back. I just imagine Josh Allen playing in that no-huddle offense of Jim Kelly when he had Hall of Famers, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, James Lofton, Don Beebe. What I mean, you can't do it. You can't do it. But my God, can you imagine what it would have been like? And Kelly, the same way. We talked to him a few months ago, Adam, on this show about how he would have loved to have played in this Bills offense today. It's so fun to mix and match. But I guess we can do it in Madden. But we can't do it anywhere else.
And I'm sure Jim's watching. Like I go back to that Detroit Lions football game, and I'm sure Jim watches and he's like, well, it doesn't matter what offense it is. I can't do what Josh just did, where he's stiff-arming a player and then, a yard from the sideline and throwing an absolute laser beam across the field to the middle of the field, and that's what I think is truly special. And honestly, these things that we're seeing from the quarterback position wouldn't be possible without those guys that came before them. And that's the same too for my father's generation with Terry Bradshaw before that, with Johnny Unitas before that, with Bart Starr, all those, and that's what's so cool about the position. One generation kind of builds and feeds off the other. And there's always about 4 or 5 guys in each generation that really are truly special and are fortunately, and the key thing, a part of special teams. And I think that's what people forget, that it is a team game. It does take the whole unit. You are dependent on the whole rather than just the one. And we miss out on that, I think, a little bit at times in this modern era, too. Dan Marino is still one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. Still one of the best ever. Never won a Super Bowl. Jim Kelly's still one of the best to ever play. Played in 4, never won any of them, but still, we can't discredit what these guys do in the ultimate team game and what they did for the position because they really did set the foundation for all the young guys that are playing, whether they know it or not.
All right, Matt, one of the many things you've been so gracious with your time today. We'll kind of wrap it up here in the next few minutes, but one of the many things you do is a podcast with your dad, Sims Complete. Sure. You also have the quarterback camp that we had mentioned, and that you deal with a lot of young quarterbacks and all of those things. Having said all of that, you are in the prediction business for Bleav, and I think you probably agree with us that this game's coming down to a play or two at a key moment here or there. But when push came to shove, you did pick Baltimore.
I did.
Correct?
Yes, I did. And I think it goes back to just the same foundational things that we discussed earlier. I typically just have a little bit more faith in the bigger, stronger football team in these playoff situations, the team that can obviously run the football more consistently and the team that can stop the run more consistently. And I think both of those things favor Baltimore. And then it usually goes from which quarterback is better. And this one, it doesn't matter. You know, both quarterbacks are superstars. And unfortunately, I just think Josh has to play like the most perfect game ever for the Bills to win the football game, whereas Lamar can kind of just do what he's been doing with his offense, which has been spectacular, but being a little bit more balanced with, 225 total yards, with some of it on the ground and some of it through the air, and then just controlling the line of scrimmage.
All right, Sal, anything you want to add, man?
My score is 34-31. I'm not sure which team's going to win. It's that kind of game, man. Really, it could go either way. It's going to be a great game.
It really is. And Matt, I know you have an appreciation. You were here in 2015.
Yes, sir.
Played some of the preseason. We were kind of joking about that before we came on. So Sal and I briefly had the opportunity to cover you when you were here. But what are your kind of reflections on your time with Buffalo? And I know you have an appreciation for what this all means to this fan base here.
No doubt. And the fan base was extremely kind to me, even though I was there for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, as they say. I got there late in OTAs. Rex Ryan, of course, took care of me, gave me another opportunity after I left the Jets. And it was awesome to be a Buffalo Bill for that short period of time. And I wish I could have made the roster, but it didn't work out that way. I was fortunate, though. I got to play a lot in the preseason. I got some great opportunities. I met Tyrod Taylor. I met E.J. Manuel. And that was truly just tremendous, too, because they're two wonderful individuals. I was absolutely jealous when they went on that playoff run that year. But fortunately for me, I was with the Atlanta Falcons at that time, and we just missed the playoffs. But the following year, I was able to be a part of a team that participated in the Super Bowl. So it is amazing how, things turn out that way in the NFL and playing the game. And, just really enjoyed my time being a Buffalo Bill. And wasn't a huge fan of my number 8, but it looked good in that blue uniform. I still liked it a lot.
And we still haven't forgiven your Falcons for losing that game to Brady and the Patriots.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, I'm still going to therapy almost weekly to discuss that game. So it was devastating, but no, it is amazing. Just the game and even moments like that, how difficult they were. Still look back at them with tremendous fondness and just memories of the people that were involved, the things that we went through as a team, the things that we overcame as a group, and all the people that you get to know through that process and get to know yourself more through those processes. And that's that underlying narrative of the game of football too, that it's not always about the end result necessarily, but more so kind of the journey that you take to this sport, and truly special. So I'm grateful for every opportunity that I had with it.
Yeah, that's a perspective that this town and this franchise is familiar with, obviously, from the early 90s with 4 straight trips to the Super Bowl. And
no doubt.
Looking back on just how unprecedented and unique and talented, as Sal alluded to, those teams were. All right, Matt Sims, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. You can check out Matt and Phil at Sims Complete here on the Bleav Network. And we certainly get the sense, Matt, that something special could potentially happen on Sunday night.
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate it again. Adam, Sal, thank you so much for having me. See, I did that much better than I did the first bit of the show. So I'm coachable. I can improve. And I look forward to this weekend, man. Go Bills. Go Bills Mafia. Even though I picked the Ravens, I'll probably be rooting for the Bills, just so everybody knows at home. So don't send any hate mail.
No,
All right.
no, none
Sounds
of
good.
that.
Thanks for being here.
All
Matt.
right.
We
Thanks for
appreciate
your time, Matt. Really appreciate it, man. For Sal Mayorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, Matt Sims, Sims Complete here on the Bleav Network. I'm Adam Benini, WGRZ TV. Sports Talk Live Buffalo, Monday night, 7 o'clock on Channel 2. Thanks for being with us here on Bleav in Bills.